All right, everyone, we're going to get started. My name is Kopacsi. With me is Steve Motts. Our talk is going to be on the MITRE attack framework. I guess really quickly, is anyone here, show of hands, familiar with the MITRE attack framework? Shit, we can't make up as much. All right, thank you. A little backstory. This has kind of been our personal journey into the attack framework. We are by no means experts, but Steve definitely more so than myself. I am management, so I'm here for the quick introduction and then something pretty to look at for you, so enjoy. Thank you. That's my ride. A quick agenda. We're going to talk about why we're here, why we're going to discuss the MITRE attack framework, benefits, getting started, and then Steve's basically going to do the majority of the talk on a huge demo that hopefully will work on how to actually test the MITRE framework. A bit about myself. I had something more work-related than Steve had us other shit, so I had to put more personal things. So I like comic books, I like action figures and not dolls. I'm a huge fan of Deadpool. Steve, would you like to say anything about yourself?
It's all up there. I like beer and I like keto.
All right, works for me. And a disclaimer. Everything we talk about, this is mostly, in case we curse, that it's this is not approved by our employer. He sees nothing right now. All right, so one of the main issues and one of the reasons that we're talking about this is us as defenders, the actual time for an adversary before they're detected on your, found on your network has slowly been going down. It's like, wow, we're doing a great job. Now it's only 100 days before we're actually able to catch someone. So it's horrible. I mean, if someone broke into your house and they were able to stay in your house for 100 days, do you think you did a good job? I mean, unless you got these guys right here, I mean, you should be able to detect these guys in 100 days. If not, then you are thoroughly messed up. Adversaries, this is the, I took the little part out. Basically, I did a Google search for adversaries, and this is what normally comes up. So you have your criminals, hacktivists, foreign nations, your employees. Another one that many people don't always kind of think of. They always, because every time in the news, it's always been China or Russia that did anything advanced just because you've got really shitty defense. Criminals is another good one because we're seeing more of a blend between criminals and foreign nations. You've got people like North Korea who have literally no money, where they're starving and have no power, are turning to cybercrime to then kind of fund their efforts to then try to attack other nations. So, a little bit about MITRE. They are a not-for-profit, government-funded, non-government entity. It's very nice to say. They also do the CVE, so if you're familiar with those numbers, every time Microsoft or another vendor comes out with a patch, they are responsible. They are kind of the overwatch for that, kind of helping funnel everything in there. And then we actually have what we're here to talk about, the attack. Adversarial tactics, techniques, and common knowledge. This actually came out in 2013. We didn't really see anyone doing anything with it, probably for maybe a year and a half ago, and we've only been doing probably 6 months, about that much time. So again, this is kind of our newbie journey. The easiest way to kind of talk about what the attack framework is if you're familiar with the cyber kill chain, trademark Lockheed Martin, it is basically a very granular look at the last 3 chains. So instead of trying to figure out every way, how an attacker from very start to finish, we're basically looking at, hey, the attacker's already in, I should already be able to see them, but I can't, what am I doing wrong? So it's basically some tools and techniques to say, regardless of how an adversary got on your network, regardless of what they're doing, they all either want to take some shit and get it out, or, do other things. But these are very non-specific ways to kind of track that down. So instead of building, 100 signatures for, hey, this will get WannaCry, you're actually looking at, okay, if I had WannaCry on my network, what does that look like? What does it need to do to actually get to its mission? So at the very top, we've got the cyber kill chain, copyright Lockheed Martin, and you can see the actual MITRE attack framework is just the last 3 links. So basically, you've been owned, here's what they're going to do. It's kind of one of the reasons we started looking into it in the first place. We didn't really think the kill chain was, at least for our organization, very effective. There's things in the very beginning that it's really hard to find reconnaissance. So we were like, okay, we don't care about that so much as we care about our network being owned and trying to find them. Recently, though, MITRE did include the pre-attack into the attack, which kind of just puts the cyber kill chain back into scope. So more about that later. One thing to realize with the MITRE attack, it is a living document. It changes so far quarterly. They keep coming out with new tactics, new techniques. So one, it's very cool they're working on it. Really sucks when you think you have the spreadsheet done and then all of a sudden you have to redo it all, because what they'll do is not only add, they'll make changes, they'll move stuff around. So Steve's got a lot of fun in Excel. So again, the basic concept for the MITRE attack is assume compromise. You just don't know it yet. I know everyone's been hearing that. There is some debate whether or not you think that's more of a defeatist attitude, but for the scope of this talk, we're going to say that's what we think is going to happen, so you might as well be looking for signs of it. And the eye chart test. I can barely read it from here, so I feel bad for you guys. Not enough to do anything about it. But so you're saying, what is the MITRE attack framework? So this is it. This is a condensed version because it would have been even worse. But if you just go to the MITRE attack framework, you can actually look at this live on an HTML page and click around, or you can download various Excel documents and PDFs. So you've got the tactics across the top and then the techniques on going down the bottom in the rows. So they're trying to group similar type activities. So command and control. If piece of malware or an adversary wants to do command and control, here's the types of things that they're going to have to do that. Same thing with lateral movement. How are they going to accomplish lateral movement? So the whole point of the MITRE attack framework is to have many, many different detection methods for each of the actual tactics. So instead of saying, again, hey, I've got one, it's basically, we don't want to recreate AV. AV is the TSA of security, one bad thing happens and then that's all they ever look for, which is total bullshit. This is the funny thing. So they already changed. So we were hoping they weren't going to change again after this. But again, they used to have 188 techniques. They added the other tactic, which is initial access, which again is kind of the beginning of the cyber kill chain. So they're kind of a work in progress. They're not sure where they want to be. They used to have the attack framework kind of mapped out for, here's enterprise attack framework. It really included their breakdown of here's Windows attack framework, here's Linux attack framework, here's Mac attack framework. They basically combined it to make it easier, so they kind of just grouped names differently, but it's still the same thing. Like I said, quarterly about that we've seen for updates, so they're always changing, which is very good. And if you actually click on anything, this is actually what you'll see. These really do vary as far as content. The attack framework is not a magic weapon. It will not automatically do cool shit for you. You have to do a lot of research. It is a lot of work, but we definitely feel like it is worth it. The three main things are, it gives you examples of the actual known adversaries that uses TTP. So you can see, ATT, Dragonfly, Bears, Lions, Tigers, depending on your threat intelligence company that names this stuff. Mitigation is what you can actually do to actually prevent some of these things from happening. And then over here, what we normally focus on is the detection. These are where that varies greatly. Some of these are very good nuggets of Yoda wisdom. Some of them are like one line, like, holy shit, that I don't know what that means, and if I did, I wouldn't need this. This one's actually pretty good because it's actually saying, hey, in a Windows event log, you want to look for this event ID. This will help you kind of identify it. So your mileage may vary. Some of these are much better than others, but there is a great community now that people are using this. A lot more of the EDR vendors are actually going this route, actually putting the MITRE attack framework into their software, as well as MITRE recently announced kind of a, hey, EDR vendors, if you want to send us your product, we'll actually map it to the MITRE attack framework and tell you how well you do. Many of them chose not to for various reasons. The last one is this references here. Seems kind of odd because it's at the very end and there's hardly anything here. This is really good information because this is additional security research that other people have done on these actual type, either the TTPs or the adversaries. So you can actually go in there and say, okay, someone actually took some more time to look at this certain attacker and adversary and further examine their IOCs for you, so you have that information in one place, just because this thing would be, you know, a Harry Potter novel instead of this condensed page. And the benefits. So I talked about this. Hopefully the results will be out later this year. That'll be very interesting. So you can hear all of your chosen EDR vendors, what they've told you before, and how it actually turns out in the real world. The main thing for us is it identifies gaps. We're able to now do monthly tests that Steve is going to show you how we've automated that to actually make sure our detections are built and they're working as expected. This is also another way just to do, I believe Jim called it unit testing of your security controls. Copyright Jim Beachy. But again, it's one of the things that we've actually had some issues with is, you know, based off our current incidents we've had, we know that we should be able to detect A. Well, 3 months later, we weren't able. What happened? Why did our tool fail? So what we're able to do with the MITRE ATT&CK framework and some open source software is actually make sure on a monthly, quarterly basis that all of our detections that we've built, we know are properly working and will detect the exact same thing, the exact same way every time. The other reason I would say this is we kind of started looking into this. My responsibilities at Consumers Energy is the cybersecurity incident response team, which also encompasses vulnerability management, pen testing, and the red team, which is for me great because I get both teams and you get different kind of opposing views on how things should go.
That's purple.
That's right. But one of the things we've seen in the past is when the red team has done some engagements that the blue team isn't aware of, it can become a little hot-tempered. You know, people feel like, I just got screwed over. Why did you guys do this? And then, you know, Jim's in like, why did you guys not detect this? And it's like, sorry, you know, our tool didn't work. I already gave our tool vendor some shit early, so I hope they're around still. Thank you. But this was a great experience for more of the purple team, where the red team and the blue team, we all sit together. We're able to just kind of work really a lot more harmoniously. The red team feels like they're providing value. The blue team doesn't feel like they're just getting kind of shit upon, saying, oh, we didn't detect this. Because that's the whole point of this. We know you can't detect everything. So what they're able to do is say, hey, Steve, Joe, when you guys did this, you know, what did you guys do? We didn't see this. What kind of detections can we build? And the same thing when they do their red team engagements, the blue team is able to say, hey, Steve, nice try. We saw you do this. And Steve's like, what did I do wrong? So we're just constantly building, improving, and making both sides better, which again makes Consumers Energy a much safer organization. Also, budget for new technology. One of the things we were able to find out just in our short time span is our current EDR product is only going to, let's say, 40% of the attack matrix. Are we, what?
42%.
Sorry, I rounded down. Thank you, math man. So roughly 40% of the entire MITRE ATT&CK framework we're able to do with our current tool set. So what that allows me to do is either tell Jim, hey, we need more money, or we need more resources to build it internally. So the biggest thing we're going to be looking at is ELK and CISPON. With the addition of those two tools, it's going to double that and to get a lot more information to really just kind of augment our current tool set and enrich it. Really like this slide. This was made by someone much smarter than myself. They were kind of just going through the MITRE ATT&CK framework, and they were kind of basically do a one-liner. What is the attack framework? Why should I use it? So what they did is they actually took StuckNet and actually mapped it down to all of the detections possible. So with Stuxnet, there was many different 0 days used, and everyone said, oh, it couldn't have been found. There was 32 opportunities for detection had the MITRE ATT&CK actually been used, which kind of opened up our eyes. It's like, wow. It's the great thing, and it's also its own enemy, where you've got lots of detections for things, and sometimes they're generic. So again, dependent upon your environment, some things may only hit when something bad is happening. PowerShell. If you use PowerShell, if your IT department uses PowerShell, one, you'll find out if they use PowerShell using this, but two, there's a lot of tweaks you have to make. This is not a, hey, we're gonna sit around for the weekend and, jam this baby out. This is probably an 18-month journey for us, and that's just based off our 6-month journey. We know how much longer we have to take. The other thing I wanted to add, it's been blurred out to protect the innocent. We're huge believers in Kanban, and this has helped us out tremendously with the MITRE ATT&CK framework. So the way we basically use this tool for visual management is every time we put in a new T code, which is a new technique, basically gets assigned to someone on the blue team. They actually start working on it, so it'll be moved into track. And then as soon as they believe they actually have the detection worked out enough, they basically put it over here to validate, and it gets assigned to a red team member who then actually goes through and said, hey, I just lit you guys up and nothing fired. So then it goes back to the drawing board. They kind of go back and forth. It's just a great way for us to kind of keep track of the work, who's doing it, what status is at, and also from a manager perspective, I see what the heck the team's working on. This is Steve's portion, but I just want to add one thing before I shut up. One of the things that we did originally, we took the MITRE ATT&CK framework and we basically just sat down as a team for about a day and said, here's all the techniques, here's all the tactics, here's our tool set, and we just kind of did more of a qualitative kind of talk. Hey, are we good? Are we bad? Are we poor? And then we had certain criteria of why we are that way. So do we have the data at all? Okay, well then we're a poor. Do we have automated capabilities across the environment to get all that data? Okay, maybe we're good. The funny thing that we learned was we were definitely much more harsher on ourselves because we were like just hitting poor, horrible, really shitty. And then we actually doing the testing found out that in many cases we were much better. So that was good, but I think that's kind of just the way a lot of very technical, highly capable people are. They always are constantly thinking they can do better. So I will shut up now.
Can you hear me? Is this thing working? All right. So Christian told you about the why, the who they are, and what it's for. I'm going to tell you how to do it. And again, I am not an expert at this by any means. I just have a lot of work in it lately. It's a great tool. There's a lot of frameworks that have come out lately, whether it's 20 critical controls. I've been through the gamut of frameworks. I will tell you, in my honest opinion, this one puts the rubber to the road because it actually, if you take the time to review it and implement it, it will help you greatly once you realize you're compromised. Again, a little bit to Christian, what he said earlier. They just did add in April of this year initial access, which is a vector which you could think of is the pre-attack. There's a little differences. I do apologize. I hope the demo works, and it is going to get a little technical. So for those that aren't too technical, sorry, but I got to show the value. So the first thing you start off with is a scoring system. It's imperative that you sit down with your team, your management, whoever, and figure out your scoring system. You're going to set criteria for measuring the effectiveness of your tools, whether it's EDR, antivirus, your SIM, whatever it might be. And then create a rating system. Typically, in our environment, we go from 0 to 5, and we have color specific to match that. 0 means none, bright red, all the way to a 5, which would be a bright blue. Again, and you'll see why the colors are important here in a minute. Because management loves colors. I'll just be honest with you. That's the real reason we have colors. Yeah, and unfortunately, the big boss is in here to see all this. So you're creating a heat map. So the first thing you're going to start with, as Christian alluded to, you're going to start with your team. You're going to sit down, you're going to grade yourself. And as you grade yourself, what's going to happen, your Excel spreadsheet or whatever platform you're using to track your scores is going to start to create a heat map, and the heat map will be indicative of colors. Obviously, the red, the color, you're not very good at detecting that tactic. Blue or green, depending, you're really good at that tactic. In between, you might be yellow, orange, whatever it might be. So assign key focal points for each level, and I can tell you, we are still trying to get our scoring meaning better defined. But as you can see here, it's a little hard to read, but none through excellent or 0 through 5 is our scoring. 0 means that we have no data. It's not being captured at all. We don't have the capability. 1 and 2 are a little murky for us, and we're actually trying to better define what 1 and 2 is. But essentially 1 says you get some logs and they might be going to a sim, maybe, I don't know. And then of course 5 means that it doesn't matter what an adversary does, you will catch them on that specific tactic and technique. There's a caveat here, and you're going to see this. For each technique, there could be 100 ways to do something. And trying to capture all that, one of the things that I've noticed with MITRE is they have a great reference, as Christian alluded to. But again, someone, if you're on Twitter, you will see the Subtees and the Tifkins of the world coming out with new ways to circumvent some of the security tools on how you might catch them. Pay attention to that. I just saw a great one on WMI yesterday that we thought we were watching WMI pretty well, and that got completely blown out of the water because there's another way to invoke WMI. So this is a heat map. This is not ours. This is an example, but this is what you might start with just to give you a color perception. And the numbers here, depending on the number, obviously light up. So 0 should be bright red. As you get higher in the number chain, it gets a little lighter, and eventually you'll turn into something like this, a blue. So your goal is to reach the blues or the greens, however you determine you want your colors to look. This is the big one for management. And actually what's really nice about a trend chart is it really tracks your progress as a team and also as it relates to MITRE. We good? All right. Again, track your journey. You'll be surprised where you start and where you get. And this is what our trend chart looks. This is an example going out to 2019. One thing I do want to point out is this little dip here. You will encounter this. I will guarantee you. So what happens in this particular instance, I'm not calling out any vendor's name, but we had a vendor who guaranteed us that they could catch past the hash. I'm like, okay, sounds good to me. So we, as a team, we sat down and said, okay, we believe this certain technology can capture this, so we're going to rate ourselves out of the gate as fair, which I think is a 1, or poor. Poor is a 1. Yeah, poor.
The vendor was actually being, just in case you want to know, I've already given them shit, so I'm not going to not say it now.
So anyways, that vendor came in and said, so we did some testing, and what happened after we tested numerous different ways, it wasn't captured. So therefore, our score actually, we had rated it like a 1. It's down now to a 0 because the capability in the tool wasn't there to detect it. So you will find some of this stuff as you go through and test your technology.
Also, it's slow. Like, you're not going to expect your line to like just go, holy crap, it's skyrocketing. I mean, God, I can't remember, like half a dozen ones that were good, and I think we went up from like 1.2 to like 1.3. So I mean, it's small measurements and movements. Yeah,
it really is. Like I said, I think we went up a total of 0.65 in 6 months, and then this is a scale of 0 to 5, right? Just to put in perspective, I want to say we're hovering in the low 1s, which if you look at the scale, depending on your scale, it's not very good. But I'll tell you, our team is good, and we're probably way farther ahead than a lot of other teams.
The other thing, sorry.
Nope, go ahead.
I know my time's up. One of the things we also decided on early on, because we knew it was going to be updated, our measurements go from the original MITRE attack framework, because otherwise our score is going to be so all over the board because they're constantly adding things. So another thing to kind of, if you go to this journey, kind of put your stake in the ground and say, we're going to look at 118 of these techniques, and that's where our measurements are going to come from. Otherwise, they're going to flux all over the place, and you're just going to look like crap, honestly.
So validate and tune for adversarial techniques, that's one of the, so this is about testing your tech. This is where we're just going to get a little more technical now. The good thing is I can tell you in the last 3 months, the amount of open source tools available to actually test MITRE and incorporate MITRE attack into your environment has grown substantially. We're going to get in, these are a few of them. We're really going to take a deep dive into obviously MITRE, the Caldera framework, and a little bit of the Red Canary. Again, choose your tool that's best for you, and I will tell you, you might use multiple tools. And this is the main point, right? You're going to execute, you're going to collect, and you're going to develop. Those are the three keys that we do. You're executing the technique, you're going to develop a response, and then, you're going to collect the evidence, we'll get into that, and then you develop a response based on that evidence. Whether it's a process name, whether it's a file being dropped, those are the kind of things that lead to the detection of whatever tool you use. So these are a couple of the tools. Most of these are written in Python or PowerShell. Again, for the most part, you don't really need to know a lot about programming. These guys are doing great work right now in keeping their tools up to date. And these are not all of them. These are just some I'm familiar with that I've used or critiqued. So Endgame essentially is just a bunch of Python scripts to detect capabilities against malicious malware. What Endgame actually takes is from number 2 down. You would still, again, at any of this, the adversary or the hacker has to get the payload in somehow. So we're not talking about that portion. We're talking about once a user has clicked on a malicious email, this is where they take over from. Uber Meta, again, this is both host and network based. This is also a Python with some YAML stuff, but you could see here, and essentially this is what you're going to see. I mean, this is the legit what an attacker or an adversary has to do. The first thing they need to do is discover what they're on, how they're going to do it. And I get that question asked a lot. What is the most important piece you think in the tactics column? My honest opinion is discovery, because the sooner you can catch them, the better. And if they can get past discovery, it's going to make it a little harder. APT Simulator, this thing's really cool. This is a Windows PowerShell or batch scripts, but what's really neat about this per se is it actually will emulate an attacker. For instance, it'll throw out bad DNS queries to know on bad sites. It'll actually create event logs with known event IDs that your EDR solution, your AV solution, your SIM, whatever it might be, should detect and say, hey, something bad's going on this machine. This is perfect for testing the blue team, but more importantly, your technology.
This one is also cool because if you ever get management or other people to say, hey, we just saw that, Fozzie Bear's in the news and this is how they attack. How would we fare up? This tool actually has a list of adversaries you actually can choose. It'll actually go through all of their TTPs to actually test you against that. So you can say, hey, based off what we know of this adversary, the tools they use, we would be able to detect it, we'd be prevented, or, we're just not part of their group they're looking for. So again, very cool.
The last two we're going to talk about, this is where the demo's going to get in, is Red Canary. They do a lot of work, and I just saw they released some more stuff. They use, their things are called, they're just small components of either command shell scriptlets, they got DLL injection, they do a lot of great stuff. This stuff is free. At the end of the slide presentation, there's a whole bunch on resources where you can go pick up all this stuff for free. They have a commercial product, I don't know anything about it, but their free stuff on GitHub is what we use, and we incorporate into Caldera, which I'll show here in a few minutes.
The Red Team, Canary Red Team, one of the, I guess I'll talk about the product real quick if you're looking for something. They don't replace your EDR. They're basically, they take the telemetry data from your EDR and they point to themselves and do analytics based off the MITRE ATT&CK framework. So if you have money to spend, it's also another way to get that MITRE ATT&CK framework implemented.
MITRE, which is obviously the non-government entity that actually does the work, they have created a tool called Caldera. We will get in deep into this here in a few minutes because I do like the tool. For one, it captures all the information, as you'll see. A couple things about it, there's some caveats. The actual software itself only runs on Linux, but to actually use the Caldera agent and the software, it needs to be installed in a Windows domain environment. I will caution you that when you install it, the agents or the rats, as you'll see, there's a limitation roughly around 20 hosts. Why I like the product is you can change names, so as you advance, your blue team might be keying on certain names, i.e. by default this is called commander, so they might key on something like that. You have the ability to change the name of the client and the rat, and you can drop it at any point in your network. So let's say you test, just to validate that the technique is being covered, you can then somehow drop that at another system in your location, and it makes the blue team like, okay, this is working across all teams. There's 30 techniques built in. However, if you know a little Python and you can copy a code, which I'll demonstrate, this can be increased greatly. What we have done, or I've started to do, is I've taken the Caldera, or the red team canary chunks, and started incorporating that into Caldera so I can increase the automation within the tool. Again, it uses a Windows agent, works on either 32-bit or 64-bit, and the agent itself deploys a rat, and anyone who knows anything, typically adversaries are installing rats. Obviously, they need some communication inbound and outbound of your network. And then the really, really cool thing about this is it captures the artifacts. And you can see here the steps taken by the adversarial technique, the data collected, PIDs, etc., and we'll get into that. And then what you can do is you can match this back to your technology and validate, hey, I saw, according to this, PID 1234 got started. You can go to your EDR solution and say, yep, I see PID 1234, and this is what I saw coming out of it. So that's one of the reasons I value the tool, is just the data feedback we get. All right, so we're going to quickly go through this, and I'm going to blow through this part because I'm hoping that the demo works. But essentially, there's three main components of Caldera. You have the operational step, you have the action, and then you have the parser. The operational step is the meat and potatoes of the solution. It actually takes it a step, i.e., let's just say you want to do discovery. You write a step, the step then invokes the action then invokes the parser, which then displays the information back at a high level. Commands, these are what the step initiates. So the command, for instance, in this one, that's not here, but it might be NBT stat. It might be the command someone would run to figure out what domain they're on, maybe a user that's logged on, those kind of things. And then the parsers, this is what then displays either the information returned to the adversary or an error message, depending on how you configure it. Just a couple things. If you're going to use Caldera, word of caution, if you create your own steps and also commands, uniquely name them, because I'm told when they update Caldera, they overwrite names. So if you have a step or a command that's named the same as theirs, you will lose your work. I personally haven't done any updates because we're building our own internally, but just a word of caution. Breakdown of the steps. These are the parts of the steps. We're going to go over this in a little bit, but you have a description just saying what it's for. A tag. So this is important because this is displayed in Caldera. So you know exactly what technique you're using and tactic. So here you can see on this one, this is T106, and it's part of the discovery tactic. And it also does T106 and execution. More of it, just a display name, preconditions. This is what it takes for this step to execute, meaning what's needed. And then the post condition, what you're going to get back after you run the step. Description and action. The two key things here, every step must have a description and an action function. Without that, the agent won't operate correctly. And then the command breakdown. So the step initiates the command. The command is what you would expect the adversary to run should he gain access to your system. In this instance, you can see this particular command here is running NBT stat with a -end. So this will be passed to the command line. That command line will be ran, and the data will be returned back in the parser. And this is essentially what this is saying is that, hey, show me, this is looking up domain groups if you're not familiar with Windows, show me a space, a couple letters or numbers followed by the group. That'll tell you the domain that the system's on. So this is the one we're going to try to demo. So here is an example of Atomic Red Team. This is T107, which is a system service discovery. And we are just going to take one little piece. I mentioned earlier that, you know, Red Canary and a host of other open source tools there's so many different ways to do something. Literally, this is a big list of how to determine system services that are running on your system, and you can see there's a plethora of them here. We're just going to take the SC query state all, just because I don't got a lot of time. I could spend hours doing this. As an example, this is where I hope it doesn't fail. Give me 1 minute. Oh, don't go there though.
One other thing to mention quickly is on some of the techniques, they actually span multiple tactics. So you may have the same technique represented in a couple different areas, and we just go through and we've actually duplicated them to make sure that we can understand more from an IR perspective. Okay, we have this technique, but in what, I guess, phase and what tactic did we actually find it, just so we're aware of it, but it's up to you. You can choose to only use one of them.
So the tactic we're going to actually look at really quick is called the SC query tactic. Again, this is the actual command you're looking at right here. So this is the command that's going to be run. I did pre-stage both the command and parser to save some time. But here is the step. That was the one that I initially showed you about. Essentially, it's just saying, again, there's the description, what we're mapping to, and you'll see why this is important in a second. And then what is required for this to occur. Again, all Python, so if you don't have a lot of Python experience, the good thing is you can do a lot of cut and pasting, and then just make a few little tweaks to make it your own.
Steve, as a manager, I don't know what SC query does. Do you want to explain that?
SC query will query the local machine to see what services are running. SC query all, which we're going to run, will actually return a list of all services, both started or stopped. You can figure out why an adversary might want to know that, i.e. if there's an EDR solution running, what AV they're up against, those kind of things. So, if everything works right... Huh? Oops. And if you learn how to type. All steps, just so you know, in Caldera are kept in the operation underscore steps PY. So what's happening here, what Caldera really looks like before I actually include this, is to start Caldera, your VM has to work. Oh. Why is it not working? And that's why your demos... Oh. And so what'll happen by default, it'll come up and it's running. So I will show you quickly what Caldera looks like. This way you guys can see and what the value of the tool, at least from my standpoint, has. Of course, Firefox always wants to update too right in the middle of something. And what was the IP address? That's a great question. 11.
As you can tell, we practiced this presentation 9 times.
And it didn't work. How's that? Oh, jeez. Yeah, see, nothing ever works. Where's the options? See, this is why I hate doing demos. It's all right, we'll get it working. Maybe. Dude, it's going to flame out. Man. Oh, helps if you put in the right IP address, though. There we go. Yeah, don't do this. Obviously, you don't want your end user just hitting add exception, but for my case, we're good.
Do as we say now, as we do.
All right, so what you have here, we'll just go over the basis of Caldera. What's nice is hopefully this comes up and I can see connected agents. Great, it's not going to fail. So just real quick, all this is saying is that I have one agent connected right now to the Caldera system that's preloaded with the Caldera agent. The agent will be used to deploy the RAT. So in order to do this, I'm going to create a... they're called adversaries. One thing that's really cool, here's the attack matrix built into Caldera. The green means that they have coverage for that given technique. As you can see, there's a lot of missing green. The one we were looking at that I was going to show you is system time. Right now you could see they only have net time built into here. I'll show you another one I built. So we will go into create an adversary. We're just going to call this ConVerge demo. And we're going to pick a step. I'm going to pick one that I have created already. And we're going to do this WMI service. And you could tell it's going to, this part of the tactic or technique covers both T11 or T107, which is discovery, and execution. Once you have that selected, you just hit submit. The network I've already set up, operations, there should be none. And we're going to create a new one. Demo. We're going to select the system that I had just shown previously, which is ConVerge Demo, the demo net, and then the PC, which is my PC. A lot of other stuff here you don't need to know, but I'm going to bootstrap the rat with the agent. And when you hit submit, this is where the power, if everything works. Oh, yes, please, please work. Please, yes, all right. So if everything works correctly, yay! So what you have here is just an operational overview of what happened, the PC. The important piece is on the right-hand side here. The first thing is the steps. So these are the steps that an adversary would take based on the technique I just ran, which was WMIC. And if you click on this, this is what is returned to the attacker. So essentially, I ran WMIC service, get services, and you could see these are all the services that are either running on my system or stopped on my system. Very good information for discovery. And so that's the first list. Very important. It just tells you visually what the attacker is getting back. The real cool stuff to this is the jobs and the artifacts. The jobs show exactly what was started, how it was started, the rat associated with it, along with some PIDs and if it was successful. Instead of reading through all this gibberish, MITRE was really good in that they created this artifacts page, which you'll spend a lot of time on. And essentially, this is the stuff that you care about as you're doing your testing. And the key artifacts, obviously, are the PID. You have a PID for the rat, so that would be the remote authentication tool or attack tool, whatever you want to call it. The PC tag it operated on, and the authority of the system. I will throw something out here. If you're going to do this in your environment, this is a local system, you want to ensure that the account you're using has domain privileges. The reason that is, it's what's really cool about Caldera, it can take a step and chain a bunch of steps together. So let's say, hey, I do system discovery or service discovery, and then I see, hey, there's something running as Steve on this system. It then can try to get credentials. If it gets credentials, and these are all built into the attack platform, is it will then try to pivot off another machine. So that's why if you're running this in an enterprise environment, use some creds, not domain creds, because again, this is what bad guys do. Not that there's any malware in it, but if you don't know what you're doing, the potential exists that you could stop a service that's important on a system.
One of the cool things about that as well is, instead of going through all, 200 techniques, which is great because you can then actually map out and say, these are the ones we can do. I mean, this is obviously a lot more realistic of what an attacker is going to do. They're not going to do one, then stop, do another one and stop. They're going to go from start to finish and see where they can go. So this is a lot more realistic way to actually run the tool.
And the good thing about it is you do, like, let's say remote service discovery, depending on your SIM, you might have threshold levels set up to detect, like, because there's a lot of noise. WMIC runs a ton in enterprises, and you're going to see that. So a lot of tuning takes place. However, attackers aren't going to know that type of stuff. They're going to know that there's probably someone watching. So you can, depending on how fast, there is jitter built into this, so you can daisy chain the attack techniques to give it a little timing difference, so you can either see if your SIM or whatever is detecting it. And the last thing that we really care about is 11380 in this particular example, and what that is the PID that matched when I ran WMIC remotely. So what should have happened, your EDR solution, if it's worth its weight, it should have captured that from a process named command.exe, someone spun up WMIC with the PID 11380. If you go to your EDR solution, hopefully you see that, yep, sure enough, I see PID 11380, and they ran WMIC service all. Why did that run? So this is the reason I like Caldera. Again, a lot of tools, a lot of preferences, but it's just visually, it's great to go compare the tools quickly. And with that, now to get into just a resource before we wrap it up, a lot of great work's being done. The guy on top, Roberto Rodriguez, Cyber War Doc, one of the smartest dudes I've personally met. He writes a shit ton of stuff for MITRE. If you haven't checked his stuff out, these heat maps, these things I've showed you, literally I've taken them from him and I've customized it to R. He recently has just released something called HELK, which is for blue team hunters, that incorporates a lot of the MITRE stuff built in. Red Canary, obviously I showed you. MITRE Caldera. If you don't follow at MITRE Attack, and you're going to get into MITRE, you should follow them, because that's when you realize they've updated their framework and you got to go do more work. So good stuff to follow. Endgame, Uber, and APT Simulator. One other thing is Fagawi at 72. I will start posting the stuff I've been writing up on my GitHub, so that you're more than welcome to take the Python if you do go down this route and incorporating your stuff to save you a little time. And I would love to see if others get into it, do the same thing. Maybe we could knock out, because like Christian alluded to, there's 200 and some techniques, and obviously we can't write those, not one person. I mean, there's a lot of great work going on, but even with Caldera, or Red Canary, I think they're up over 80 now, so we're not even covering half of techniques that have been seen by other adversaries. And with that, we will shut up and take any questions.
One thing I did want to add, one of the resources we did not add because in our testing they were not ready for prime time, there is a distribution called Red Hunt, which basically includes Red Canary, includes Uber Meta, APT Simulator, MITRE. But there's a beta and there's a alpha, and neither of them really worked for us. So at some time, it seems to be cool. They're trying to be basically a Kali, but for the actual MITRE attack framework. So it sounds very promising, but not so much right now.
Yes, sir.
Have you tried Detection Lab?
Have not.
It's similar to that. It uses Vagrant, automatically sets up your domain and agents, and uses Caldera. So it's like all-in-one. You issue one command, downloads everything, sets it up, so you can do attack the winners.
Oh, nice.
Cool,
okay.
thank you.
I will check that out. Yes, sir.
Yeah, so this is great work. I've done a lot of similar stuff. I've given them the framework, and Christian said something about the references, right? And a lot of them, they reference application whitelisting. And I was wondering if your thoughts on that, if you think it's a propaganda or a panacea. I was wondering, maybe, what you think.
No,
I wrote that reference as a legend, but...
No, actually, Sands just did the Blue Team Summit. That was one of the things they kind of talked about. Is like, MITRE attack framework is great, but if you do application whitelisting, you get to block 80% of the crap anyway. So is it really worth it? But yeah, so application whitelisting is great, but again, not everyone does it, and people that do it don't always do it right. So you can't really put all your eggs into that one magical basket.
And I will just comment on that. 99% of organizations whitelist PowerShell. And guess what? I'm going to get by whatever you do unless you're doing signed certificates. So, yes, sir.
One question, please.
First of all, great presentation, very helpful information. You alluded to how we could get a copy of this work. Would you just reiterate that, please?
What's that?
How can we get a copy of this presentation?
Yep. I'm hoping the guys here.
It'll be recorded and back up, but
You send me look at Fagawi 72. I'll be more than happy to send you the presentation if you need it. On top of it being recorded and being, I'm assuming, posted somewhere.
I'm InfoSec Pimp if you want to talk about Deadpool. Yes, sir.
Can you go ahead and just put up your contact slide again?
Yeah.
And you can reach me on email at fagawi72@gmail.com as well.
At AOL, come on.
Yes, sir. Yeah, that'd be you.
Real question this time is, so when you're experiencing security events from real live possible adversaries or possible events, do you have a good way of tracking the TTPs, experience of events? I find a lot of things are like URL IP based. Do you have a case management system or something where you can go back and say, okay, they used install util, they did DLL side loading at a more TTP based level, document the exact procedures performed and kind of reference that in the past,
We use Fast Instant Response. It's an open source ticketing system currently. We're actually going to be going to a commercial solution because it's also part of a automation platform. But yes, that's one of the things that we were able to do, because a lot of the stuff what we're able to do is, okay, let's look at the past incidents. What are we getting hit with the most and where are we failing? Because you look at this, it's like, oh shit, where do I start? Because it's huge. But again, that's kind of what we just did. We took the red team, we took the blue team in the room, and guys, going through all of this, where do you think, based off our past experiences, we're having the most trouble? And that's kind of where we started. Yep. Yeah, because those are stale and worthless. The other thing we've done is we've really taken the MITRE ATT&CK framework to, it's kind of like our Bible now for like the T codes and everything. So any SIM offenses, any other tools that we have, we try to map as much back to the MITRE ATT&CK. And if it doesn't map exactly, we just kind of use the same thing, but we have custom codes to try to make sure that we're all kind of speaking the exact same language. Regardless of the tool set, we're mapping to a certain type of adversary or attack method.
Yep, and one of the other learnings we've seen is that you're going to realize you thought you knew your network and the systems and the applications that run on your host system, and then you're going to see you really don't. Again, you're going to have a lot of exceptions for given types of tactics and techniques, but hopefully through that you'll learn what is normal on a system and what's not. So.
You have trouble doing detection mechanisms. They list them as it looks easy, but it's actually very difficult.
It's very hard.
Yeah.
We kind of did ours. We were like, here's some low-hanging fruit. And that's why we said, we have a very good EDR solution, but we're looking at things like Sysmon to kind of augment that, because there's just stuff right now we can't do with that, as well as like ELK to make it actually more real-time, because, yes, we have a SIM like everyone else, but again, we need other things.
We good? Appreciate it. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, guys.
For your time.